Okay, the recording has started, so I believe that's my cue to say welcome and good morning, everyone. Um, Here we are again, our assembled team of what you might call the Learning League. DC Comics has the Justice League. Child Bright, we have the Learning League, where we have again assembled our team of usual suspects to welcome you back to the second edition in our patient-oriented research discussion series, where we will be examining a number of learning resources and hoping to also collect your experiences with many of these that we will be taking a preliminary look at, and then hoping to circulate some further information on a spreadsheet that will be partially built by you. And the members of our team, as you can see here on our second slide, are many faces and names that will be familiar to you if you were with us for the first in this series, and you'll get to hear more from them later. Samantha, Lena, Stephanie, Linda, Pierre, and myself. I am still Kent Lofsgaard. Uh, Next slide there, I guess, Pierre, and we'll go right to the housekeeping. Yeah, just a reminder to please disable your camera and mute your microphone to help limit our ever popular bandwidth use. Relay input through the chat box and access any of the resources through the provided links and QR codes. And the QR and QR code is quick response, which is something I only learned recently after getting used to these ubiquitous Rorschach looking type of quick access codes. So we'll have those again for your convenience. Next slide, Pierre. There we go. And then I have to move myself to the next slide as well. Just to overview the session, as I said, we're basically just taking a preliminary overview look at several of the tools and guides on the topic of patient-oriented research that are available, and some of the training programs that have been developed in a more fulsome way that are able to be taken in cohorts as well. And then we'll be inviting everyone into breakout rooms for what we hope will be a more detailed discussion where you can share your experiences and input. Next, there we go.
Yeah.
All righty, so I'm going to, oh, go ahead, Pierre. I think I jumped.
Oh, I was just going to say, take it away, Sam.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Cihr. So I'm going to start us off with the Learning Together simulation. So I've had the privilege to work with this team, and the Learning Together simulations are a suite of 4 videos that were co-created by a multiple disciplinary team of researchers, trainees, research staff, clients, and families. And the videos focus on topics related to unique aspects and phases of the research process. And so things like idea generation, working with research teams, recruitment, data analysis, and dissemination. And this slide here shows a photo of that's clipped from the video, and then the topics that are covered. And like I said, I've been lucky enough to work with this group, and we're currently in the progress of getting these videos online for you to use in your own research settings. So we don't have a QR code for them just yet. Next slide, please. So this tool includes the 4 videos, which are about 3 to 5 minutes in length, as well as a facilitation guide on how to use them in practice. And we wanted to create these training videos to leverage the power of simulation as a tool to allow learners the opportunity to recreate challenging situations and learn from these experiences in a safe and controlled environment. So we designed these for research teams and patients to learn how to support each other through complex and challenging situations that are associated with patient-engaged research, and to learn through doing how to authentically and meaningfully engage in research partnerships. And so they can help multiple disciplinary teams reflect on their perspective and approach to patient engagement and support deep learning through the simulation process. And therefore, they're best used with a group of diverse stakeholders that includes patient partners, researchers, trainees, research staff, and I would also include youth in that. Next slide, please. So the pros of these is that they're going to be freely available and they can be scaled to larger groups for independent teams. Each simulation can be completed in about 45 minutes to an hour, and they promote discussion around commonly experienced situations in patient engagement. The cons is that they require an effective facilitator on the team to stimulate discussion. And ideally, they're conducted with at least one facilitator. And we usually do around 5 to 10 participants in a group, but you want to work through those together. And so it's great to have the multiple disciplinary team. Great, and that's all for me.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks, Pierre. So I'll be talking about the involvement matrix. It is a tool that was co-developed with experienced experts, patients, and their parents or family members together with researchers. You can access the publication of the involvement matrix at this QR code or the link here. The tool can be used as a conversation with patient and family partners about the roles that they might like to have in a research project. On the left-hand side in orange, the stages of the research project is listed with preparation, execution, and implementation. Tasks can be listed within each of these stages. The top row in blue highlights the different roles that partners might want to have, such as being a listener in which they are given information, a co-thinker in which they are asked to give an opinion, an advisor in which they provide solicited and unsolicited advice, a partner in which they work as an equal partner with researchers, or a decision maker in which they take initiative and makes decisions. Next slide, please. The purpose of this tool is to facilitate discussions between researchers and patient and family partners. So I want to share my experiences as a trainee in using this tool. I have used this tool with my partners through the Sibling Youth Advisory Council, or SIBYAC, who I've partnered throughout my PhD studies, as well as with the Patient and Family Advisory Council, or PFAC, who are partners on the Ready or Not Brain-Based Disabilities projects, one of the projects within the Child Right Network that I'm a graduate research assistant on, with Barb Galuppi and Sonia Strom, who are the research coordinators. In both advisory councils, I've used the tool to have conversations, which was helpful for me to better understand the interests of youth, young adults, siblings, and parent partners. With the PFAC, subgroups are formed for different initiatives based on the roles that partners selected. For example, there were subgroups to plan for co-presentations at conferences, as well as co-creating knowledge translation tools. The tool was also helpful for both advisory councils to retrospectively revisit conversations about roles and expectations during the project. It also might be helpful when partners might wish to have changes in the roles. For example, some partners want to take a step back, in which they might want to be taking on a listener role, and then they can take on a partner role when they're more available. Overall, the tool can be used by anyone, including researchers, research staff, patient partners, and it's meant to have a conversation. Next slide, please. Overall, the pros of this tool are that it can help to empower patient and family partners to have conversations about their interests in various tasks of the research project and become more aware of the roles that they might want to have. For example, more active roles, such as being a partner or decision maker. But a limitation of this conversations between patient and family partners with researchers is that there's no exact mechanism or outcome for how patient and family partners can take on these roles. So it's really important and up to the research team to make sure that there are opportunities for them to become involved with certain roles. Thanks, and that's all from me. Passing it on now to talk about the next tool.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, so building off of that idea of the involvement matrix that Linda was just exploring, where the research team explores sort of how patient partners can be best involved throughout the various phases of the research project. The Saskatchewan Centre for Patient-Oriented Research developed this tool that I guess we can commonly refer to as the PORLIT, which measures the degree to which a given project meets discrete definitions as set out by Cihr in relation to the patient-orientedness of a research project. And so as you can see from the graphic on the screen, the tool itself uses 5 criteria to gauge the level of patient-oriented of how patient-oriented the research actually is. And of these 5 criteria, it includes, as you can see on the column on the left, the degree to which patient partners are involved in the project, how well patient-identified priorities are reflected in the work of the research, whether it is focusing on outcomes that are important, particularly to patients, whether the team itself is comprised of a multidisciplinary set of experts and knowledge users. And lastly, with the core component of patient-oriented research being the implementation element, that final criteria looks at how well the project aims to integrate the knowledge generated from the project into practice. As you can see from the top row, each of those 5 criteria are scored from a continuum from 1 to 5. And of course, as you look at the definitions or explanations of the scores, you can see that at the lower end of that spectrum, it would suggest that within that specific set of criteria, your project might not be as well suited for patient or as well adapted for patient-oriented research as it could be. So really what, I guess briefly, just going back to what we were just discussing, the tool itself is a self-assessment tool where each project can then assess their own progress of their project and see how well it aligns with some of these core tenets of patient-oriented research in the work. And ideally what it's really used for is to provide an opportunity for projects to critically reflect on the work that they are doing and to assess how patient-oriented their work is, and perhaps reflect on elements that they could incorporate if they wanted to expand on that work and enhance their patient engagement strategies. So really what it is good for is ideally at the start of a project, for assessing whether your project has all of the needed mechanisms in place to ensure that you are seeing or are able to promote or create an environment for authentic patient engagement. But of course, throughout a project, it can be a really useful tool to just think back and reflect on sort of how you are meeting those criteria and what other course corrections you can make to address some perhaps limitations that you are experiencing. And in my estimation, the target audience for the resource really would be the researchers and the research staff. And it'll be up to the research team to sort of direct those questions and those discussions so that you can, as a team, get to a better understanding or a better level of implementation for your patient-orientedness of your project. So in terms of some of the benefits of the resource, it's really short. It's only about 3 pages in length, so it's relatively quick and easy to use as a litmus test to gauge your project and sort of where it stands in terms of engaging with patient partners. Some of the drawbacks, or I guess limitations of the resource, is that some of the language can get a bit challenging to differentiate levels of patient engagement. So, for instance, if you go back to the table, there is a lot of for the first column, I guess the first row, where you're looking at the degree of engagement of patient partners. You can see that their involvement spans from on a continuum from informed to fully empowered, but it gets a bit challenging to fully differentiate between collaboration and empower and sort of how those really fit neatly into a project. Without, I guess, that face value, that might make it a bit challenging to confidently apply these some of these criteria to your project without, some more deliberate reflection on the part of you and your team. All right. So taking, I guess, a bit of more of a step back and looking at a broader picture of creating a strategy or a work plan for patient engagement in your project. The arthritis the Arthritis Research Canada had produced the Patient Engagement in Research work plan, which really serves as a great starting point to promote those reflective discussions within and amongst team members to promote those authentic partnerships, and I guess set the stage for your project to fully engage with the community and your patient partners. As you can see from the graphic, the peer framework includes 8 discrete components. Each of these outline meaningful engagement elements from the perspective of your patient partners. And as you can see, it includes topics such as instituting certain procedural requirements, where the team discusses what needs to be in place to fully include patient partners. So this would range from terms of reference, ways of meeting times. Another element is contributions. So the team would explore how, and you could use tools like the involvement matrix that was just covered, where the team then explores the various ways in which partners can contribute to the research project over time. And then lastly, I guess third example would be the team interaction element, where the research team or research project would discuss how the team can best communicate with each other and sort of set baseline expectations for these interactions. Now, how does it actually work? It is a workbook, and what it does is provide a series of open-ended discussion questions that will help teams think through these 8 components, and the responses as the team develops and reflects on those questions. Those responses can then be used to form the foundation of a work plan that will define who is involved, what they will do, by what timeline, and ultimately how success of that engagement will be evaluated. So I guess generally what it is, it's a workbook that contains some pertinent discussion questions, which stimulate discussions amongst the research team, and really starts to build that relationship between the patient partners and research team members. And ultimately, the goal of employing this resource is to facilitate those high-quality partnerships between these stakeholder groups by providing some level of guidance to teams as they think through how they will incorporate these various elements in their work as they move forward. What is the research good for? What is the resource good for? Ideally, it would be a great resource that you can employ at the beginning stage of your projects, either when it comes to the grant development stage or even at the initial stages when you are kicking your project off the ground, as it's really sets the stage well for you to fully engage with your partners and ensure that those interactions are meaningful and authentic. Target audience really is for everyone, but I would say primarily it is a great resource that would be used by your research team members as well as your patient partners. All right. In terms of the benefits of the resource, it is freely available. It is quite easy to use. I think it comes in about 27 pages or so. And it's really adaptable to a variety of settings. So it can either be used in a targeted workshop with your team or just in general team meetings. Since the resource was developed with patient partners' involvement as well, the questions that you explore really are focused on issues that are important when setting the stage of your project and developing these meaningful relationships. And I guess the drawback, a limitation of the work of the resource is that it is primarily geared towards those initial phases of a research project. But again, that's not to say that it can't be adapted by you if you are trying to do a bit of a check-in in terms of where your project is and looking to course correct for your project moving forward as it develops into sort of the stages of the work. All right.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to continue by speaking a little bit about methods of patient and public engagement. So this is a guide that is used to explore different options for participatory approaches and engagement methods across the project. So things such as using a Delphi process or different types of discussion groups. So they list actually the 28 different types. Each is assigned a number and also a color to correspond to the level of engagement that's sort of required for that method. And some approaches might be useful for more than one stage of the research process. So it's never too late at any point of the project that you can go back to this guide and decide how can we engage people at this point. That's it. And so basically this guide goes into detail about each of these methods. So as you see here on this slide, there's a kind of introduction page with all the methods listed, all the color coding, and then afterwards each page goes into detail for one specific method. So we can go over to the next slide. So overall, the purpose of this tool is really to allow research teams to explore different potential approaches or engagement activities that could be used to engage people across the research process. And I think it's really great to be aware of the different options that are available. I didn't know a lot of these existed. So in order to be more creative or reach people in different ways, I think this guide can be really helpful. And the target audience is particularly for researchers and research staff. But I think anyone who's involved in sort of the planning of a research project could find this useful. And in terms of the some of the pros and cons, we can go to the next slide there. So I really like that it highlights many different options apart from the commonly used ones. And it's also quite visually clear, with the color coding and the different numbering organized by the stage of research. So it's pretty easy to use. It is a little bit text heavy, there's a big document with each method described into detail, but you can just use the legend and read more about the ones that you're interested in using. So I think overall it's quite an interesting guide. And yeah, we got a comment there about seeing the full guide, so it's shared in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Right. So yeah, I think that's a really cool tool to actually use. Similar to Stephanie, I was not really aware of many of those methodologies that you can use when you are engaging with groups. So yeah, no, it's really great. It's quite in depth. So I would certainly encourage you to take a look at that. And apologies, I haven't quite gotten a chance to get to the chat messages quite yet, but yes, we will be releasing these slides. We will get your PDF copy as well as a recording, assuming no technical hiccups happen on our end. Right. So next up is just some general recommendations on compensation strategies for patient partners. So I mean, I'm sure, as you all know, patient partners can be fully engaged through a wide spectrum of activities when they are actually involved in a research team. And of course, I think we all recognize that providing compensation is important, not only to recognize their actual contributions, but is critical in removing barriers to participation and further promoting equity and diversity within your research team. And I guess historically, we certainly have much experience in terms of compensating patients for their roles as subjects or participants in research, but there really is limited experience when it comes to compensating patients for their roles as partners within a research team. And really, And much of the recommendations that we have to date sort of have been developed internally with many of the patient-oriented research networks. And in an effort to sort of streamline and make some more generalized recommendations, there was a task force of some SPORE network representatives a few years ago, which set out to develop a set of proposed guidelines that would hopefully, or at least try to harmonize the compensation and expense reimbursement policies as it relates to patient-oriented research. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at that document and just kind of sift through it. It does provide a really nice set of guidelines that can outline to teams some of the various compensation policies that they can employ when it comes to having partners on their team. And the purpose really is to help research teams prepare better at the initial stages of their project to fully involve patient partners in their work. So when it comes to developing your grant proposal, the guidelines will help give you a bit of a sense of what sort of budgetary accommodations you should try and account for when you do submit your proposal, to then allow for the full involvement of those research partners on your project. And really what it's good for, as I mentioned, in addition to that idea of helping you set up or at least budget appropriately in your project, it is just really a great resource to help teams figure out how they can help reduce some of those barriers to participation and ensure that you really are hearing from all the relevant voices that you need to further inform your work and ensure that the outputs actually are of great benefit to your patient population. Target audience here, I think more generally it is applied to those research team members who are involved with setting the budget. So I would say certainly it's for the PI as well as the research staff. So a benefit of the research itself is that it covers a really broad range of potential expenses. It gives some examples of what's the difference between compensation and reimbursement, what sort of principles should be applied when you are developing a reimbursement or compensation strategy. And in the document, they actually provide two recommendations or two models, I guess, for compensation. One would just be a flat rate based on unit of time that a patient partner is involved in an activity, and another one is based on the level of engagement. So depending on how your project is sort of applying patient perspectives in their work, you can assess which would work better for you. And a really great benefit of the research as well is that it provides some baseline recommendations for if your work does involve working with Indigenous elders. So they do outline a variety of practical guidelines that you can employ if your work does involve working with those communities. Now, a drawback is that the document is quite large. I think it's about 40 pages, and there's a lot of information and background to get through, but it's all important, and I would certainly encourage you to work through it. And I guess another limitation of it as well is that at this stage, they're just recommendations, but it would certainly be beneficial for you when you are setting out to incorporate some of these elements to engage with your specific patient partners and to delineate what is the recommendations that are proposed, whether they do align well and would be of benefit to your particular cohort that you work with. All right, Stephanie, back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to briefly overview the Cihr Jargon Buster. So essentially, this is a glossary of terms or a big list that provides some lay language definitions for different terms that are commonly used in health research. So to help maybe decipher some of these scientific terms that we like to use. So the link is shared on the slide there. We can go to the next one. But essentially, I mean, it's quite straightforward and simple, but the idea is that this glossary list provides lay language definitions for frequently used terms. And so Pierre was previously talking about reducing some barriers to engagement. And I think this is a good example of one that can really help in terms of engagement and discussion, so that everyone is speaking the same language and understanding the same terms within a certain context. Some of the terms have in brackets beside it SPOR, S-P-O-R. So those are terms that are specifically defined within the context of Canada's strategy for patient-oriented research. And I think that it can be very helpful because not everyone is familiar necessarily with the meaning of certain terms within the health research sphere. So again, it diminishes some of the barriers for participation in discussions, particularly for those that may have not worked in the field before or been involved in a research project before. So in terms of the target audience, really, it's everyone. And I think, you know, when a team decides to work together, all members should be understanding what everyone is saying and speaking about. So I think it could be something useful to look at all together. We can go over to the next slide. So yeah, I think that's really the main pro to this glossary, that it can potentially remove sort of language barriers, scientific language barriers, so that everyone is speaking the same language. However, it's not an indefinite list. Like there's a certain amount of terms that are kind of commonly used in health research, but there would be potentially some other terms that aren't included in this glossary, you know, depending on a given specific project. So it does have its limits, but I think it's a good starting point.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I was just about to mention that shortly we'll be getting ready to divide our attendees into a number of breakout sessions where we will be considering the following questions. Have any of these resources and tools been used by your team? And if so, have you found them useful in your specific context? Or are there any other resources that you have found particularly useful? But right before that, we'll go over to Lena to introduce the porch modules.
Oh, sorry, Kent. Well, we'll break. I guess we can break here before we do the training section.
Okay.
And go to our group. So yeah, we can do that.
There's nothing like rearranging the program on the fly.
Exactly.
That's why it's live. It's the wonders of live webcasting, folks. Sorry,
perfect.
Pierre,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So we will. So we have you. Let me just make sure I have the breakout rooms properly set up. So we have about 3 breakout rooms organized. I think we're about 8 to 10, I guess 7 to 8 folks in each of these. And then we'll break out for about 10 minutes. And I will share a document right now with everyone that you can just keep up. We will share those documents again, but it does list some of these resources as well as other ones. And you're more than welcome to just chat amongst yourselves, see if any of the resources we have covered so far today have been particularly useful to you. And perhaps, I know we've received a few through the chat box, but feel free to list or just submit some more that you think are useful for teams. And we'll do that for about 10 minutes. We'll come back and then cover about 4 training curricula that are out there for patient-oriented training. So open the rooms in a moment. If there's any issues, I'll stay back. So if there's any issues, feel free to jump out of your room, and I'll still be outside, I guess, making sure everything tries to go as smoothly as possible. So we'll see you in 10 minutes again. All right, so I think we have everyone back. Can we still hear my audio? Am my screen still sharing?
Yep, we can see it here. Thanks.
Perfect. Excellent.
You are seen and heard, Pierre.
I feel so welcome. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for, I know 10 minutes is always way too quick on these breakout rooms, but I'm hoping you were able to have some fulsome discussions. And I guess, as we mentioned from the top, that Excel spreadsheet, we will share that with you as well. And feel free to, I guess, disseminate it even further. And if there are any tools, feel free to edit it and add any other links that you think are particularly useful when it comes to some of the practical elements of trying to build capacity for patient-oriented research. All right, so our second half today is going to focus on some training programs. So all the resources we were looking at before were more on on suggestions and practical strategies for how you can better involve patient partners. The remaining section is going to focus on some training programs that are out there that can either help you get a better understanding of patient engagement in research, or more importantly, be used to onboard new team members, particularly patient partners, as they join into the research enterprise. So first off, we have the Porch module. So I'm going to hand over the presentation, I guess the podium, to Lena. Let me make sure my slides can advance again. I seem to have lost my mouse. There we go. All right, Lena, there you go. Take it away.
Thank you, Pierre. Hi, everyone. So I was actually brought up in our conversation a little bit about the trainings that are available. So I'll be talking about the patient-oriented research curriculum in child health, or Porch for short. So these are a series of interactive online modules, and they're designed to really build the knowledge and the skills for authentic patient-oriented research in child health. So they could be of interest to patients and families, child health researchers, healthcare professionals, and as well as trainees who really want to know more about patient-oriented research. What's nice about these modules is that they were co-led. They were developed co-led by a parent caregiver and along with a researcher. And the modules were developed using validated teaching and design principles of multimedia design, and they were further refined through usability testing involving a variety of stakeholders in child health research across Canada. So all the modules include different interactive tools. There's video vignettes, assessment exercises, and there's links to additional resources that could be helpful for further learning. And although the focus of the Porch modules is on patient-oriented research in child health, a lot of the principles are quite broad enough and to apply to patient-oriented research in general. So we could go to the next slide just to show a little bit about what they include. So there's four modules, and there's one currently in development. So two of the modules are on Research 101. They're split into two parts. So the Research 101 part 1 is what is health research and who is involved. So this really provides an overview of the key concepts in health research. It kind of goes through the jargon as well that Stephanie was talking about in the Jargon Buster. And it's also primarily intended for patients and for families who don't really have a formal background in research. So that could be a very good starting point. And in part 2, it describes mostly the timeline of a research study. So this describes the key stages of a research study and how patients and families could be involved at the different stages, as well as the challenges and benefits of patient-oriented health research. And then the other two modules are about patient engagement, again, split up into two parts. So the first part really summarizes key concepts of effective patient engagement in child health research. So it looks at the readiness for engagement, the spectrum of engagement. And in the second part of the patient engagement, this is focusing more on the practical aspects of patient engagement. So it looks at the challenges, so changing the culture, issues with tokenism or operational issues, as well as the methods for engagement. And the last one is Research Ethics 101. It's not yet ready, but it's currently in development. So we could go on to the next slide, please. So pros and cons, which it's really great. It's for a beginner level. So for individuals of different learning levels and backgrounds. they're quite quick to go through. So each module takes approximately 30 minutes. So for the 4 modules that are currently available, it would take about 2 hours to complete, and it's self-paced. The cost is free, and it's easy to sign up to. And what's nice is that once you complete each module, you get a certificate of completion. So I think this was brought up in our discussion that if you have patient partners engaged and they need some training, you could have some almost proof to submit with your ethics applications that your patient partners have received some baseline training on patient-oriented research. And there's not really a schedule. And we said cons more as a limitation. It is primarily focused on pediatric health research, but a lot of the principles, as we mentioned, can be applicable to patient-oriented research in general. So that's the port. It's really great, very smooth, interactive tool. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Yes, I really like the Porch modules. Childbright did provide some support to help develop those, and I think they turned out really great. And the fact that they're easy to navigate and freely available, I think would make them quite impactful to use in many of our projects. Next up is another online training program that's a bit more in depth than what's covered in the Porch module, and it's a bit of a mouthful. It's an amazing acronym, but it's the Patient-Oriented Research Training and Learning and Primary Healthcare Online Module. So Portal, PHC for short. And really, it's an initiative that was funded by the Ontario SPORE Support Unit and developed with the additional supports provided by the Inspire Primary Healthcare Network, as well as the Centre for Rural and Northern Health Research. And really, what the program is set up as 4 self-directed and interlocked modules. As you can see on the screen, there are module 1 is broken up into 2 segments, and really it's built in a way where each module or the content of each module builds on what was previously covered, but there's nothing precluding you from jumping through the various modules to enhance your capacity in one particular area if you feel that it is a bit lacking. Now, the overall goal of the program is to develop capacity among multi-stakeholder group. So that includes patients, clinicians, policymakers, researchers, with the ultimate goal in mind to get them oriented to conduct and use patient-oriented research strategies or methodologies as in a specific context of primary healthcare research. But again, the content can certainly be utilized by any group in any stream of or any field of research inquiry. Now, working through these 4 modules, each learner will develop understanding of the major topics and issues that are experienced by patients within primary healthcare. It will help you gain knowledge of the approaches to how you can identify patient priorities. It would help you understand particular methods of how to engage and be engaged in research. And of course, in conjunction with some of those resources that we were covering before, can really make for a useful exercise in terms of developing any particular approach to your specific team. Thirdly, the training will help develop appropriate skills within various team members when it comes to engaging patient partners in POR. And lastly, and I think what is useful of this particular resource is that it forces you or promotes you to actively apply some of these skills and knowledge that you develop over these modules within your own particular context. So it's quite customizable based on what your particular needs are. So again, briefly, it is a self-directed online set of modules that you can access. The primary goal, of course, is to build capacity within all members of the research team to conduct patient-oriented research and do so well. And it's similar to the Porch modules. It's a really good introduction to some of the basic tenets of patient-oriented research and how you engage with patient partners in your research. So it really helps set the stage for teams that are moving forward in employing these methodologies in their work. And as we mentioned before, the target audience is quite multi-stakeholder in nature, so it has been developed for researchers, all manners of research staff, policymakers, the clinicians, as well as the patient partners who want to be involved in the research enterprise. Now, in terms of the positives, again, it's really useful at the beginner stages, since it will introduce team members to the basic core components of patient engagement in research and kind of build that up to where you can start developing those practical elements to incorporate in your project. The time commitment, depending on how much effort each user puts in, you can look at about 1 to 2 hours per module, and really why it takes why it can take that long is because the resource itself is set up and provides quite a bit of relevant references in each of the modules. So for further reading, the user can go and explore more additional content and form their approach as they develop their competency in this field. Great benefit, of course, is that it is freely accessible, and that it is self-paced. Similar to the Porch modules, there is a certification of completion that you can secure at the end after you work through it. And as was just mentioned, that's really great for your ethics application if you want to show that your patient partners are geared up and ready to be involved in certain capacities within your work. Some of the drawbacks, and I guess that it comes from the fact that the resource is self-paced and online, is that there is really no interaction with other users for you to challenge your ideas, expand your ideas, and I guess just discuss more in-depth aspects of the training with your peers. But that's not to say that you can't, as a research team, sort of just set the modules up as an introductory training session and then work on setting up or designing some debrief meetings where your team can kind of explore some of these concepts more in depth and inform your overall understanding. And with the previous Porch module sort of being focused more on the pediatric population, this resource is primarily geared towards primary healthcare, but I would argue that the content itself can be more broadly applied to any particular context, so that's not really too much of a limitation. Now, since the resource is quite detailed and, as I mentioned, does provide quite a number of additional resources that can be explored, it does require quite a bit of motivation on each member to diligently and dutifully work through the content and look to apply it within their particular context. But again, as a research team, I'm sure EU can come together and create that environment that would promote the completion of the training and sort of reflections within your team on how some of these principles can be applied within your particular team. All right, so next up, we have a really fun training program termed Fireworks. And this was developed with funding from the US-based Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. These acronyms are so many. And really what these modules are a set of interactive online trainings and tools that are meant to prepare primarily youth and caregivers, but also researchers to conduct partnership-based research together. And as you can see on this slide, the program itself consists of 3 core units. Each of these units are then made up of 2 to 4 modules that kind of break down some of the core components of the learning outcomes and works, I guess, guides the learner through the content. Now, Unit 1 provides some more information about partnership-based research to really help youth or caregivers better understand how they can be involved and contribute as partners. Unit 2 describes the research process, which not only helps stakeholders understand how research is done, especially if it is their first foray into the research enterprise, but it really does a great job of illustrating how research partners can work together and how they can be involved to participate in research projects as a partner. Lastly, the third unit is more focused on practical skill development, and really what it does is it teaches the users a number of skills and strategies that research partners need to develop to work well together on a team. And in those modules for that unit, it focuses on, I guess, communication, respect and appreciation, as well as problem solving. So it does a really, in my opinion, a really decent job of bringing patient partners, especially if they are youth or young adults that have no prior exposure to the research world, bring them onboard them, bring them up to speed, and allow them to be fully integrated within a research project. It's a really great online tool. It is self-directed, and it's not that much of a the time commitment is not that taxing to work through. The ultimate goal, as we were kind of just touching on in the previous slide, was to prepare all your stakeholders, but primarily youth and caregivers of youth, to be oriented to participate and be fully integrated within a project and contribute their skills and expertise and experience to the research team. And it's a really great resource to onboard your team members and introduce them to the core and basic elements of patient engagement and patient-oriented research methodologies, now particularly as it pertains to youth involvement in the enterprise. And I guess as we've alluded to, the target audience really is primarily geared towards pediatric patients or young adults, as well as their caregivers, but can certainly be applied to researchers who are gearing up to work with this particular population. Now, in terms of the benefits and the drawbacks, I think one pro is certainly it is fun. I guess to go back to the slide, you actually get to create a bit of an avatar, and it's a bit more, it's fun animations, and it does make a lot of use of interactive multimedia presentation options. So it's not just reading through walls of text, there are videos and a few interactive elements throughout. Again, it is targeting someone who is quite new to the research enterprise. So certainly at the beginner level, if you have no previous experience working on a research project, it really does a great job of setting the stage. Great benefit is, of course, that it is freely available. And the time commitment, as I mentioned, is not that demanding. All three modules, take about 2 to 3 hours to work through them. But you certainly can get more out of it if you are putting more in. So definitely encourage users to, really give it them all. Now it is self-paced again, and what is a really useful element that I think they've incorporated in the platform is this idea of the user building a resume. And what it really speaks to is, or what it highlights, is the patient partner's expertise, their skills, what they hope to get out of a particular research partnership, and sort of what elements can be incorporated at the team level to best support their integration. So what this is really useful for is if you are a patient partner and you're looking to work with a team, working through these modules, creating this resume, really does do a decent job of setting the stage of what the team would need to provide for you to fully allow or fully promote your full engagement within the team. And again, one of the drawbacks, just because it is an online and self-paced module, is that there's no real opportunity for you to interact with any of the peers who are working through the material as well. But again, as for all the other ones you sort of mentioned, if you are using this as a research team, you can certainly amend that and allow for some sort of interactive or debriefing sessions with the members of your team who are working through these materials. All right, so that is Fireworks. And last up, we have Samantha, who's going to walk us through the Family Engagement and Research certification course.
Thanks, Pierre. So I am going to walk through the FER course, and it's delivered by CanChild and Kids Brain Health Network in partnership with McMaster Continuing Education. And what that means is that you get a certificate of completion at the end of the course that is through McMaster University. I am a very proud FER course grad completing the course in winter 2019, and I'm currently the course coordinator for the fall 2021 and winter 2022 cohorts. Next slide, please. So in this 10-week online course, it's comprised of both asynchronous work, so you can think of things like readings, discussion board posts, and group exercises, as well as online synchronous work, so things like group discussions through Zoom and group discussions in smaller groups as well. Throughout the course, we pair parents or family members with researchers to develop a knowledge translation or KT tool about any topics related to family engagement and research. And projects have included things like infographics and videos. This course is unique in that it helps build capacity for authentic partnership by learning together. So researchers and families learn in the same space. And that's something that we've seen with the other tools as not a con, but a limitation. And through the course, participants learn the core tenets of patient-oriented research and have a chance to practice these skills by partnering together with that capstone KT project. So the target audience really is for researchers, trainees, and research staff, as well as caregivers and family members. Next slide, please. So there's lots of pros to this course, and I think we've seen lots of people in the chat have also mentioned that they are graduates of the FER course or are planning on taking it in a future cohort. And so we're so excited to hear that. It is a beginner level course. It does teach basic and core tenets of family engagement and research. It is a 10-week course, and that takes about 30 hours to complete over the 10 weeks through both those asynchronous and synchronous work. It is provided through a scholarship that is provided by Kids Brain Health Network. And so the cost currently for this upcoming cohort is covered. It is an online synchronous and course, but it does have asynchronous work as well. It is offered in fall and winter cohorts. So fall is from September to the end of November, early December, and winter is January to end of March. And you get a certificate of completion at the end, and also be part of a community of practice with other cohorts. There are private Facebook and Twitter pages for the FER fellows. And it's really a great opportunity to partner together to develop a KT tool. And those are also posted on the CanChild FER website. And so there is a whole compendium of different types of KT tools that are listed on there as well. And so in terms of the con, so not necessarily a con, but definitely a bit of a limitation from my own experiences, that it is quite a commitment to take this course. And you need to be at a place where you're ready to develop those skills by working together. It's very active and involved, and we expect participants are engaged and actively participate throughout the 10 weeks. So it can be a lot on top of being a trainee or working a full-time job or having a family. It is a bit of a commitment, so that's just a limitation of it. You also have to apply for the FBR course, and there are often more applicants than spaces, so it can be a little bit competitive to get into it. And that's it for me with the FBR course.
Thank you, Sam. All right, Kent, it looks like we have time.
Indeed, and we do have some time to journey back to the breakout rooms, come together with our small groups to discuss the resources presented in this second set of presentations.
Perfect. So I can open the rooms again. If I see we still have some folks around, so thank you for sticking out. I know it's a long session. So I will open the rooms again. We'll see if we can maybe keep it a bit shorter. But I'm hoping you can at least you can reflect on maybe some of these programs, or ideally continue on some of the discussions that you that you had explored in the previous session. After that, we'll quickly circle back and send you off and conclude things that way. So we'll be back in about, I guess, 8 or 9 minutes. We'll come back. All right, perfect. It seems like we're all back. Welcome again. Thank you so much for sticking with us through to the end. And yeah, that brings us to the close of our session today. I want to thank Ken for graciously hosting us today, as well as Lena, Stephanie, Sam, and Linda, who helped us present all of the content. And I really hope that it gave you a great overview of at least some of the resources that are out there. And again, of course, we'll invite you to edit that Excel spreadsheet or use it in whatever way is useful to you and your team. And yeah, hopefully we'll expand on that a bit more. Now, I guess the quick announcement is that our next pod session will be in January, and we'll be focusing more on patient partner involvement when it comes to data interpretation and data analysis. So we're still developing that one, so we'll keep you posted on that. I believe most of you have signed up for it already. But yeah, no, we'll be sending you some updates on that certainly in January. But we are in the process of developing the next set of sessions for the pods series. So certainly would welcome your feedback, and you can certainly do so through the survey that we have that I guess I just shared in the chat box, as well as through the link that is on the screen. So we certainly encourage you to provide some feedback in terms of other topics you think might be of interest for you for us to explore in this context, as well as what you thought of the session, and any feedback that you might have in terms of improving how we host this particular output. That will be greatly appreciated. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be reaching out with the recording and at least the slide deck, as well as that spreadsheet again in the next day or two. So until then, take care. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I guess we won't see you until after the holidays again. So enjoy your break and enjoy your time off, and we will see you again in the new year. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
All right. We made it. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.